The NFL draft is getting closer. Watch your lion eyes, man. Your eyes will deceive you, but it is trust the tape season. And I'll tell you right now, today, here on Locked On Jaguars, why I'm loving an offensive lineman.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcast. Make sure if you watch or listen, you tap into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us each and every day. Hopefully, if this is your first time, you'll like the podcast. Here's what you're going to get. At the end of the show, we'll talk about the last segment, how Tate tells the truth, right? After I tell you in the middle of the show how your eyes might lie. So what do you believe? Do you believe what you see or what you believe, or do you believe what you don't see? That's how we'll get to this, and we'll tie a couple of prospects to those subjects. But why intangibles matter less at number 5 is where we're going to start. There's a lot of talk about ecosystem, catchphrases and words that are used by James Gladstone. Ecosystems is one, be nothing more than themselves is the second one, and the third one is intangibly rich. And we have all sat here and dissected what do those things mean. And I think we got a pretty good idea of what he means when he talks about those things. I think the intangibly rich aspect of the scouting side of it, and this is just me putting my spill on it, I believe that they matter less early, unless you're using them as a tiebreaker, then they end up mattering more later. Like when a player has flaws on day 2 or day 3, and you're trying to figure out exactly what they can do for your team. Well, you don't focus on his flaws, you focus on his strengths. And if that's something that you need for your team, and all that player would have to do is just be really, really good at what he does, while of course working on the weaknesses. But the thing is what does he do that we want a player to do? And I think that's where the intangibly rich part comes in at when they say to be nothing more than themselves. That means that what they're trying to do is marry the idea of bringing in a player, knowing exactly who and what that player does, because they're looking at the tape and they're finding his strengths, and they're not paying attention to his weaknesses. There are some people, I believe, that do this, whether you do it for a living or whether you do it in pretend. I think what they sometimes try to do is say, okay, well, a player does this really, really well, but we need him to do that. You know what? He can do that too. We can pull it out of him, mainly because we want him to be able to do both things, but we can do that. Now, I'm not talking about like rushing the passer like Trayvon. That's different, because Trayvon didn't have a deficient skill set when it comes to rushing a passer. He had a different assignment at Georgia that, unless you looked at his traits, you wouldn't know whether he could rush the passer or not, because that's not what they were asked to do. Those are different things. And this is why the traits part of it lets you know whether or not that dude, like, it doesn't surprise me that Trayvon got 10 sacks 2 years in a row. I don't care how he got them. I don't care what it looked like. He got them. And you don't do that by accident. Maybe once, but not twice, right? And he also does these other things really, really, really well. You heard how Liam Cohen even talked about Trayvon Walker. So I'm not talking about a guy like that. I'm talking about a dude that, because whether you like that pick or not, Trayvon Walker was going in the top 5. That's a done deal. He was going in the top 5. Okay. I'm talking about guys on day 2 and day 3. Like, they have something. For instance, I'll give you an example. The Jaguars don't need the spot, but I'm going to tell you, like, a perfect example would be Jalen Milroe. Everybody knows what that kid can't do, but the people that are focused on Jalen Milroe as a football player are talking about his athleticism, his intangibles, about how he can improve as a passer. They believe they can fix that the way they fixed Josh Allen, the way that they tighten up things with Lamar Jackson. They really, really do believe the things that you can't teach and the things that are intangibles about Jalen Milroe those are the reasons why we'll draft him. And we'll draft him for those things because we want those things in our program. And how quickly he plays or whether or not how quickly he plays or how fast he develops that, well, that's on him and us. But that other thing that he has, he'll have that forever. And I think that's the difference in this. So at some positions, the Jaguars may see people and go, there's something about him I like. I'm not worried about what he doesn't do. Bill Belichick did that for a long time. Just don't ask guys to do what they don't do. That's a part of this process. Stop trying to be super coach and change people into who you think they are. So in segment 2, I'm going to talk about two guys. I'm going to talk about two independent players. One's an offensive lineman and one's a defensive lineman. One's Mason Graham, the other one's Armand Menbou. And I'm going to ask you, if one of those guys had to block the other guy, or or if Menbou had to block Mason Graham, and I know he doesn't play on the same side, just bear with me right here. If he had to block Mason Graham, but Mason Graham on the flip side had to go against Menbou all day, who are you confident that wins that battle? Who are you going to pick to win that battle with confidence between those two players? I'll tell you why I'm going to go with the offensive lineman. And here's why. One, because he reminds me of somebody who played with the Jaguars and is considered the second best lineman of their history, and that is Leon Cersei. Because like Leon, he's not 6'5", he's 6'4". He's about 10 pounds bigger, or maybe even 15 pounds bigger than Leon was when he was in the league at 313. But that's also a time thing because time-wise, that was considered huge back then. But now, today, he's 330. He's 332, man. He's a big kid, right? But he moves those feet really, really well in the run game. And if you don't believe investing in a tackle in the top 5, you got to look back at Lane Johnson and you got to look at Tristan Wirfs. Teams do that. What does that mean for Anton Harrison? Well, it means that he is competing for the starting spot, in my opinion. If the Jaguars do take somebody like Menboo, he's competing with Walker Little for a starting spot. May the best man win. And I'm going to explain to you why this puts the Jaguars in a very, very good situation if they decided to go. Now, I'm also tell you in segment number 2 or 3, when we get to it, why I don't feel that same way about Mason Graham. Now, I'm putting this on record because Mason Graham could very well be the Jaguars' pick. And once he is, I'll come back and tell you what I think his strengths are and why the Jaguars thought he was intangibly rich enough to take it number 5. But for me, for what I'm seeing, and this isn't about being right. This is just about me being strong in my opinions. I'm not as strong on Mason Graham as a lot of people. I'll sit back and explain all of that to you as we move forward here. The second segment on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. That's right, man. Look, did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and play EA. That's right, EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25, to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. It's affordable, man. And here for me, I'm sitting here thinking like, I wanted to play these games, but I got to figure out if I can play them in coach's mode. That's my thing. I can't do it. My fingers don't move real good, but I can play it in coach's mode if they allow that, and I guarantee you won't beat me. I'm going to tell you right now, just head on over to Amazon.com/FireTV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required, available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. make sure you get over and check that out today. Here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, we are 10 days out from the NFL draft. It's going to answer a lot of questions, so I'm bringing up a lot of questions to put in your mind until then. Let me tell you why I got to the point where I said, you know what, I'd move on Menboo at number 5 and be really, really cool with it. There's some things that this is me. This is not what I think they're going to do. This is me saying what I would be extremely comfortable with the Jacksonville Jaguars doing and why. I've often said on here that you're not going to find, or you're not going to be able to get in free agency, you're not going to get a real good left tackle, a real good right tackle in his prime. And you're also not usually going to get a quarterback in his prime. And you're usually not going to get a number 1 wide receiver or a number 1 corner unless the team doesn't want to pay one of those dudes. But you're not going to get them in their prime. You're not going to even get an edge rusher in your prime. So basically the premium positions you can even include center. You didn't get nobody in their prime if you're talking about free agency. These are things that you have to draft. And the draft isn't always a home run, because I'm sitting here trying to convince you guys to draft a right tackle in the NFL draft, knowing that they've increased the depth at that position in signing with the signing they did from Dallas early in the free agency period, knowing that they have other versatile parts like Pat McCarry, who can play up and down the line, all positions, right? Knowing that, and ironically, the one that most people have Pat McCarry penciled in at is right guard, and that's the one I believe he's played less snaps at. He's played a lot of snaps at center, left guard, right tackle, and left tackle. I think more so than right guard, but for some reason, everyone is penciling him in to start at the right guard position. But for me, it's about positional value. It's also about how good the player is, right? So I trust my eyes and I trust the tape. For what the Jaguars want to do, having a dude like Menboo that moves his feet the way he does and is able to get out and leverage positioning and flip his hips and anchor down in the run game just reminds me of all of the stuff when I watch Tampa on tape and when I watch the Rams on tape. Just reminds me how their guys pull and they get out. And to me, he's the best at that. At 6'4", he's not ideal, but you've had a lot of tackles underneath 6'4". Jason Peters is one that comes to mind, and I think he's built like a young Jason Peters. I said he's also built like Leon Cersei. I wonder if there's going to be the pull from Tony Wiggins, who, trust me, has been wanting to get these trenches right, man. I wonder if there's going to be a pull that in a draft where your team is probably better than picking 5, right? You don't need a quarterback. Unless a luxury comes to you like Travis Hunter's just too good to pass up, right? It's not going to happen. He's not getting to number 5. The possibility that they could move back a little bit and get a player and either get Mason Graham or a player that would be just as good for this team. Like I saw a board recently that had Kenneth Grant, like the number 13 player. So if you move back, I think both of those guys are in play, although I think Graham is still considered very, very high on a lot of people's board. For some reason, the eyeball test just doesn't do it for me. But folks made that same mistake with Braden Fisk. But Fisk, to me, I watched him at Florida State. I watched every game he played, and he was just disruptive, right? I saw Mason Graham play a couple of games where he was very, very good. You know, the eye black kind of fools you a little bit, and the way he looks in his uniform, and him and Kenneth Grant next to each other, he didn't pop as much as Fisk did. And maybe that's the bias that I had when I saw, but I just saw Braden Fisk changing games, ending games with sacks and ending games with pressure and looking unblockable against some of the best competition 2 years ago. So I just didn't see the dominance in Graham. And of course, there's the viral video going around of him working out, and somebody, I think it was Tom McMahon, said he looks like a kid on Sandlot, that movie Sandlot, imitating Caleb Von Chason in his workout. I thought it was funny, but you shouldn't have to depend on intangibles or just saying, well, just watch the tape. And when it comes to the fifth pick, there should be no doubt. And I'm not saying that there's any doubt in the decision makers' minds. I know former Jaguar Dave Waddell looked at his body type and said, I ain't spending a top 5 pick on that dude. I mean, you listen to Waddell, you thought he was describing John Yurkovich or somebody. I don't think Mason Graham is John Yurkovich. Shout out to Yurko. But I forgive me, man. I just don't see dominance. And I said the same thing about Aiden Hutchinson, and I was wrong. So full disclosure with that. But when I see Armand Menbou, here's what I see. I see a dude that's going to be a 10-year starter in the National Football League. I see a dude that's going to get a chance to have, especially if the team is successful, half of that time at least, maybe knocking on some Pro Bowls or some All-Pros, especially, like I said, if the team starts to win. But what he also does is he gives the Jaguars something they've never had, and that is true competition at left tackle with young ascending players. And you hope they're ascending at the very least. But you got a first and a second round pick. You got dudes that were chosen between 25 and 50 in the draft. Walker Little, had he hit free agency, probably would have got a deal that was similar to the one the Jaguars gave him last year, or maybe even a better deal because of the way that market shakes up. And if you don't believe that, go look at some of the deals dudes got, and you'll be like, why did they pay that guy all of that money, right? And there's enough tape of Walker Little that you gamble on it. There was also enough for Walker Little to be re-signed here in Jacksonville. The key is, though, is that the people that did it they're not in the building anymore. Tony Baselli was not the EVP. I don't know if he signed off on it. I don't know if Shad asked him. I don't know if it was all Trent's idea. I don't know if Trent convinced Shad to do it. Whatever it is, it was done. And it's really no harm, no foul, except for the fact that the Jaguars continued to slide and get themselves in the top 5. So now the question comes up is, well, is that kid good enough? Is Walker Little good enough that you don't take another tackle and create a situation where Anton moves back over to his natural college position and Walker and Antoine ballot it out? That's the question. The thing is you're now picking in a place where you shouldn't have been picking, but you're here because of the season that you had. So if you're here, when you're in the top 5, I guess they always say when in Rome, do what the Romans do, right? When you're in the top 5, you take the best player available that's not a quarterback or that's not redundant, where you already have a dude that's going to play. That's why I was always, unless you can find a way to dual role somebody like Abdul Carter, I've always been like, if you just drafted him just to be an edge rusher, then no, you got Trayvon and you got Josh. That should be good enough in terms of these kind of valuable resources. I don't feel that same way about tackle, right and left tackle. And I don't know if the Jaguars brass does. I'm not as sure about them. I'm more sure about the cornerback situation than I am the left tackles, believe it or not, especially for a team that wants to turn themselves into this physical team that wants to run the football the way that they want to run the football. And I honestly don't think you can go wrong if you're the Jaguars if you drafted Armand Menbou at number 5. It won't be sexy. But nobody can then say, well, man, they signed 5, they signed or drafted 5 new offensive linemen. They were dead ass serious about running the football. And nobody will say that kid can't play. If they draft him, he's going to win the right tackle spot. No disrespect to Anton Harrison. Armand Menbou is like that. I think if they draft him, he automatically becomes their best offensive lineman. The fact that I can say that kind of lends to my idea that that's the way that they need to go. You can draft a defensive tackle. You can, and I know y'all, I've said I don't like saying this, but to be honest, if you're looking for impact, you're more likely to find a defensive tackle at the top of the second round than you are a left tackle or a right tackle who is an instant player at the top of the second round. So it's about what you can get later, but it's also about what you can never get anywhere else. And that is a starting right or left tackle, unless you just hit on something in the draft and you were just that good at it. If you're like Baltimore, they've done a good job of that over the years. But if you're a team that hasn't done it very often, and you're a team that needs that, one, because of the change of philosophy, but two, is because it has been your biggest weakness over the last 5 years. There's no way you can say that pick wouldn't be accepted by football people if you really sit and think about it. And there's no way you can say that there's something that's something that the Jaguars shouldn't consider. Eyes might lie. I know everybody's laughing at the viral video and saying, oh, man, that dude doesn't look, Mason Graham doesn't look like a top 5 pick. The tape tells the truth. Does he do a lot of those intangible things? But we get back to the point that I'll start up with in segment 3 in just a second. I ain't talking about no intangibles right now at number 5. I'll talk about intangibles at the 2nd and 3rd round and 4th round and beyond. It should jump out at you, and it should be a no-brainer at number 5. And that's what I'm on the die on that hill. And we'll do that in the 3rd and final. I ain't gonna die, but we'll come back and talk more about that in the 3rd segment here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Nissan Armada. And our Nissan Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan and all new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the team, any team that they go to, forward as we look ahead to next season. That will be Ashton Jeanty. I think Ashton Jeanty is a real good candidate for this week's Armada Clear-Cut Player of the Week. The kid just did what he was asked to do. Can't help that he didn't go play in the SEC, but he has that body. He's built like a fire hydrant. He runs hard and he runs fast. And the ruggedness and the fact that he is so centered low to the ground, I think he's going to be a very durable player. And I think that's going to lead him to a very, very much success in the National Football League. It's clear that Ashton Jeanty, who's our Player of the Week, is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, Pathfinder, and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, so here on Locked On Jaguars, I'm talking about the possibility that the Jaguars go offensive tackle, specifically Armand Menbou. I think he's the best offensive lineman in the draft for my taking, and especially for what the Jaguars have decided they want to do. They want to break the huddle, and they want you to know that they're coming. I'd love for them to break the huddle and let you know that they're coming. But here's the thing. I'm not big on I'm not necessarily big on, I think I said this, on Pat McCarry playing right guard. And I know a lot of people have done, they've done their little boards and they've done everything. I play him at left guard. I would play him at left guard. And that would mean that Ezra Cleveland would be my swing guard, right? That would mean that I would probably start Chuma Edoga at right guard. Now, I know the depth chart, the one that's on ESPN, already has Walker Little at left, Anton Harrison at right, Pat McCarry at right, Ezra Cleveland at left, and Robert Hainsey as the center. I'm looking for Chuma Edoga, though, to put up a fight for one of those backup positions. Imagine now if you were able to, let me see if the Jaguars' actual depth chart does something a little bit different. Yeah, we'll see if the Jaguars, because I know it's probably too early for them to be naming their draft charts, and it doesn't really mean anything at this point. It really doesn't. But yeah, the Jaguars. Let me look at the depth chart real quick to see if they have it up in any kind of certain way and what it might mean. No, they don't have anything. They got Anton Harrison. They got Ezra Cleveland at left guard, Walker Little at left tackle, Anton Harrison at right. They don't have any of those new guys mentioned on the depth chart. So, you can believe it however you want to believe it or whatever. But I think when they get into camp, I think it's going to work out. I'm just not a big Ezra Cleveland fan. They got a couple of coaches on staff that know Ezra Cleveland very well. And I don't want to make the mistake to think that they don't like Ezra just because Ezra got traded away from Minnesota. That's like saying that Liam Cohen didn't like James Hainsey because he got benched, but yet still Liam Cohen still went and signed him. So I don't think you can say that. What I do think I can say with confidence, though, and I'm telling you that if Armand Menbou is the pick at number 5, I think he's the best offensive lineman on this team. I can't say that about a whole bunch of other positions with Travis Hunter being gone. I just can't. And I think you have to get what you can when it's there right in front of you. And I think the tape tells the truth. SEC competition, it gives you a little bit of, and this is the extended SEC with teams like Texas and Oklahoma, it gives you a little bit of an idea of, and with the portal being open, a lot of kids went to the Southeastern Conference that weren't already there, like Kennard, the edge rusher out of South Carolina. He played prior year at Georgia Tech, and then he goes and leads the SEC in sacks. That just gives you another player and a bigger pool of people to guard. To measure against. Now, the Big Ten ain't nothing to shake a stick at now. And Mason Graham was one of the better players in the Big Ten. It's just that translating to the NFL, I place more value. What if they're even as prospects? Well, I just place more value on the right tackle spot. The question is do the Jaguars? That's one question. The other part of it is how much do they like? How much do they like the incumbent starters? How much do they like Antoine Harrison? And how much do they like Walker Little? Because to me, if they like Harrison but are lukewarm on Little, then that means that there's a chance that they can say, hey, let's see if Anton can push Walker on the other side. And if he can't, then we leave him at right tackle. Then we play Pat McCarry at left guard, and then we play Menboo at right guard. And now we still got better because of our depth, right? We still got better. We got 3 new starters, guard, center guard, and we got our 2 guys outside, but we got 2 guys starting at guard that both of them in a pinch can go out and play tackle in case of injury. And we got a young man on the bench that we got from Dallas by the name of Chuma Edoga, and we got Fred Johnson. All of those guys are players that are interchangeable with guard and tackle. So we become versatile, we become big, we become fast, we become strong. And it allows the Jaguars, in my opinion, to be something that they haven't been at a long time. And that is not just okay at the offensive line or not just fine. I think that addition makes them spectacular. So I'm not saying this is what they'll do, but I'm saying let's open our mind to not just penciling in who everyone has them taking and not understanding or at least having some sort of baseline, like if they do something different, well, you can always reference back to this and you can understand why they would do it. A lot of questions still to be answered. Those will be answered as the draft gets closer. We'll continue to give you the best coverage we can here on Locked On Jaguars. Tune in to Locked On NFL and Locked On NFL Draft, though, because Keith, I was about to say Keith Parsons, but it's not. It's Coach Keith Sanchez and my buddy Damian Parsons. They give it to you like you can't get nowhere else, man. I'm telling you, they break it down with all of these prospects, and they'll do the same for you. All you got to do is make them your second listen over at Locked On NFL Draft. All right, man, y'all take care. We'll see you next time as we get closer to the draft here on Locked On Jaguars.